Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. It's Crown, by the way, if you don't know me. I narrate stories here. I just wanted to drop by here and say that I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little bit tired today while reading the stories up ahead. So just wanted you to have a heads up. I'm very sorry about that. I'm going through some stuff and yeah, it's kind of tiring. So hope you forgive me for that. Hope you enjoyed the stories and yeah, have a good day. Let's go. So I work at a zoo in the Midwest USA. It's my favorite place in the whole world. I have worked here as a volunteer, then as an intern. Currently working at the membership desk and have applied to work with our education department. I have been working there since maybe I was 14 and know most of this zoo's inner workings better than my own home. I even have a few animals who recognize me for better or worse. We have an Australia exhibit. As an intern, I did a lot of work with wallabies. As such, a lot of them sort of recognize me and show greater comfortability with my presence. Especially one of the younger females, Ruby. All of our wallabies are pretty cautious animals, as they are in nature. Ruby, on the other hand, is much rambunctious. Our Australia exhibit is free range for them and a pair of black swans. It's lovely and they have a bunch of scattered hangouts. Most of these spots are away from the pass and away from guests, but one is very close to the door. Ruby likes to spend her time here. Her first day on exhibit, she walked up behind the 4-year-old and sniffed him while this kid petted her. I am not shocked, they are about the same size and hardly seem a threat. But she's also gone up to adults, pulled on a pocket flap and scampered off. She frequently walks up to me and I talk to her while she stares at me. She's an unusual girl, but I love her to death and back. Now that I don't work down there anymore, I don't see her as often, but I like to make regular trips to say hello. She's a little bigger now than the photo provided, but wallabies don't get terribly big. She's still sweet as ever and she will still come up to say hello. Recently, I am down there squatting as I speak to her. She's looking at me and I'm happy as can be. It's not a terribly busy day, the weather is kind of cold, so there are maybe 10 groups in the entire zoo. And I heard a mother and her 2 kids come in. I'm speaking to Ruby for a bit and I can hear her scoff and talking to her kids, when suddenly I hear someone running. I assume it's the kids, so Ruby glances over and I'm about to as well when I see the woman's foot collide with Ruby. I yelled in horror as Ruby went down. She twitched, stunned by the unwarranted assault. I spring up and immediately am standing over her, shoving this woman away. I'm a good 6'2" and pretty overweight but reasonably strong. She already looks pissed. She is 4 foot at least and a bit of a pudgy woman. She begins screaming at me. "How dare you touch me? You just kicked my wallaby." Yes, I said my wallaby. She's one of my best friends. "You oversized robot rat. How dare you spread these lies to kids? Hey, you and your children need to leave right now. I am not going anywhere. I'll tell you stop spreading your lies, you brat." Ruby at this point recovers and scrambers off. The woman attempts to kick her by kicking between my legs, and instead she kicks me. "Ow, you crazy witch! Stop it!" The entitled mother screams incomprehensibly at the top of her lungs. The lungs on that woman. And she continues doing so with nothing I say being heard, until our awesome security guard shows up but keep her in tow. The security guard asks, "What's wrong? Is she okay? Did the swan bite her?" Black swan bites were the only animal attacks we really ever had. I say, "She kicked Ruby." "What? Who?" "The wallaby." The entitled mother shouts, "This brat just assaulted me. Arrest him right now." A security guard deals with psychos like this every once in a while. Mostly anti-maskers though. "Miss, you need to come with me." About this time I realize the kids are gone. One is over at the Kookaburra enclosure, the other is nowhere to be seen. He apparently wandered off to the petting zoo and got spit on by the llama, which he thought was the funniest thing, which caught the attendant down there's attention as this rat was alone. We were trying to drag her and her other kid out, who kept making kookaburra calls past his ability, and she yelled about our lies. Then suddenly she took off and ran at one of the large groups of the wallabies. Now this is a bad idea because the wallabies are now on high alert, and there were a couple of the babies and 2 pregnant females in this group, and this set them off. 3 of them began attacking her by kicking at her, similar to how a kangaroo does, but less effective. She starts screaming as they growl and kick at her. Such a glorious sight as she runs back to the entrance of the exhibit wailing. A couple wallabies giving chase, bless their tiny hearts. Later, the security guard pieced together that she was some flat earth fanatic and apparently everything in the Australia exhibit is not real, justifying her kicking Ruby. But we technically had no right to hold her and call the cops. We could, as per our policy stated, eject her. But until I mentioned she kicked me. So the cops were called and she was dragged off after we explained to the cops what this witch did. She got assault charges and animal abuse charges from what I was told. So I actually saw these revenge Reddits on Pinterest and I got hooked. I was talking to my friend about this because he has a nuclear story and I wanted to share it, and I was asking about details. He shot me down, but he also reminded me of Dax, and basically that whole job had a bunch of great stories. I was a second-year apprentice carpenter in 2012 and I got a job working up north in the oil and gas. We were on shift for 12 hours a day, but they basically only gave us work for 4 hours. Our real job was not to become a statistic. I'm not saying I'm smart in the general scheme of things, but in the trades you don't have a lot of sharp knives. I always liked math and I was good at it. On this job, I was a low man on the totem pole, and I did get bullied a bit. I'm not a big guy in height or width, but I've got a sharp tongue and a quick wit. Thick skin too. There was a 4-year guy named Dax who was on my 5-man team. I forgot what we were doing, but he made a wrong calculation and I corrected him. Not to be a jerk, but because I didn't want our crew to get in trouble. That's why I became his target. He was about the same height as me but roid wide, and the anger that comes with it. So towards the end of our shift, a couple of turnarounds later, I came into the saw shack, which is basically our workshop to hide until the end of the shift. I come in and it's him, 2 newfies and 2 other guys working. So to those that don't know, newfies are the Irish of Canada. They are so funny, and all the ones that I know don't have a mean bone in their body. Their humor is observational, with that crazy accent, and all their colloquialisms. So these guys were actually in a saw shop working, and Dax asked me to take the output to the table saw, which is fine. I looked and there is some writing on the output side of the table saw. In big black Sharpie was written, "Alex doesn't even know the difference between 20mm and 200mm. You're an idiot." Something like that. I'm Alex, and I don't know the metric. Residential construction uses imperial and commercial uses metric. I have no reference for metric measure because I was mostly residential until this job. It was true. So all I can say is wow, as a hamster in my brain is on his treadmill, a mile a minute thinking. It's near the end of the shift and this is our hiding spot, so some more people are shuffling in and I can feel people looking over my shoulder, reading. My dad, bless his soul, was a smart guy, and one thing he said was if someone is bullying you, stand up to them. You will probably get kicked, but a bully only looks for easy targets, and if someone fights back, there will always be another victim that doesn't. They will move on. He was more pragmatic than anything. So I asked the room if anyone had a red Sharpie. One was produced, and I began to make grammatical, punctuation, and spelling corrections on Dax's manifesto. So one of the newfies, and all of his accent and colloquialism, said to the room something like, "He's correcting the spelling." The room absolutely erupted in laughter with the exception of one person, Dax. He was livid. He was so livid. Most people were laughing at the newfie humor, but that's not how Dax saw it. In front of everyone, he told me I was going to die for this. So we had to go into our lunchroom for the shift, debrief, and Dax was noticeably absent. Apparently, he grabbed a billet sander and sent out the message before the next shift could see it. But that's not the end. We were flying in and flying out, and Dax lived about 3 hours away from me. But we shared the same major airport, so I went to my foreman, who was also a newbie, and gave him a heads up. He was a stone throw away from retirement and he did not like waves. Dax was a tidal wave of trouble. So we were in a quasi-union. I don't actually know what they did, but I do know one thing. They didn't like to do anything except to collect dues. So my foreman calls our steward, who is the absolutely laziest guy I've ever seen. He had the world's greatest job security and he had a hammer that never got touched. Like you could take it back to the store, he got it from as if he bought it yesterday. Like he polished it. This guy didn't like doing anything, but he especially didn't like filing out forms or defending people that are bad news. What did he do? He called the threat against me an incident. An incident isn't specifically an accident, it can be anything. And up north there were lots of drugs and a condition of employment is no drugs. So the steward got Dax pissed. As in he had to do a piss test. I think the threats he made against me in itself was enough to get him fired, but the piss test was ironclad physical evidence, and Dax didn't pass. Once the paperwork was done, they went to Dax's room, made him pack up and took him to the aerodrome for the next flight out. Moral of the story, don't screw with the grammar police. I'm a 32-year-old female, my husband 35, and I have a 3-week-old newborn. My milk supply has been low, so I've been pumping every 2 to 3 hours. The arrangement my husband and I agreed to was that he and I would both wake up for the first feeding/pump session, where he would go feed the baby a bottle and I would focus on pumping. The issue is that my husband had insomnia and can't fall asleep easily. To mitigate this, I'll wear sleep headphones and will listen for the baby's cries when he's hungry. My husband's ask is for me to wake him up when this occurs, so that he can help and I can focus on pumping. However, when I do gently wake up my husband at the time that he asks me to, it's like a knee-jerk reaction for him to be angry. He'll jerk, complain loudly that he just fell asleep minutes ago, slap the bed with his fist, her open hand in anger, then stomp off to tend to the baby, after which he will cool off, start singing, and put on his cute voice with the baby, and otherwise be okay. Meanwhile, I am left feeling horrible, feeling guilty for waking him up, to the point where I don't want to wake him up again because I'd rather just take care of everything myself than deal with him being pissy. Last night I told him how these outbursts make me feel, that I'm afraid to wake him up because of them. His response was that his reaction is a reflex, no different to how a knee pops up when struck with a hammer, and that I need to just accept that his response is completely natural. Well, it's 2 AM now, I wake him up, he does his same angry song and dance, and I go to pump. After he gets over his burst, he comes out being positive and happy, trying to lightly joke about how this really pissed me off and that I really couldn't get over it. Admittedly, I tell him passive-aggressively that I am over it, but maintain a shortness with him. He gets angry again, stating that of course between the two of us, he's the one who can't sleep, but I'm the one who's entitled to wear the angry face. He takes the baby to the bedroom and slams the door. After he's done feeding the baby, I tell him that I'm going to sleep outside for the night, and he asks me again to wake him up when the baby wakes up. He adds verbatim, "You just ignore my being mad for the first 15 seconds after you wake me up. I've done a good job here and I feel like I'm owed that. I need you to be a big girl." I feel resentful of the fact that the burden is on me to get over his outbursts. However, I do also recognize that his outbursts are short-lived, and that he is waking up to help me during an otherwise difficult time where both of us aren't getting sleep. He does do a great job of supporting us in my emotional well-being during the rest of the day, so I don't know, I may be the jerk for harboring this resentment. I need some outside perspective on whether he has a point and if I should extend him owed grace for this issue. And now some comments on the post, someone saying, "You're not the jerk. This is the hardest time as new parents, and both of you have personal challenges adding to the difficulty. Both of you are exhausted, then it's expected that patience will be thin and emotions will be more difficult to control. As someone who has dealt with insomnia, I can empathize with his despair of just having fallen asleep only to be woken. However, he shouldn't be using terms like big girl when you are expressing sensitivity to his reaction. He should simply apologize each time to you if it really is involuntary. Tell him that your response to his outbursts are involuntarily as well. Another commenter adds, "Not the jerk." I maybe would have felt some sympathy for the husband, but his purposeful use of insulting language, be a big girl, when it's his problem and his responsibility to grow up and be a big boy and stop throwing tantrums. The mother is up sooner, sleeping less, and now has this fear/anxiety/upset/anger that she now has to deal with and settle. I'm sure this crazy angry anxiety causing actions every night are not helping OP to produce more milk, that's for sure. The third commenter goes with, I'm gonna go with not a jerk here. Stop waking him up. The stress his anger, even though it's involuntarily, is causing you is damaging. Tell him that he doesn't get to tell you to be a big girl when you are the one having to deal with his outbursts. You're sleep deprived and emotional for a very valid reason. This is making things worse for you. There are so many ways he can help. This way is not working for you and your emotional well-being. Someone responded to this comment with, just to add the stress this is causing will not help with the pumping. You need to be relaxed and have lots of oxytocin to pump effectively. Source: I'm a breastfeeding peer supporter. At this point, he is actively harming your effort and pumping is hard enough as it is. He needs to seriously improve his attitude and stop stressing you out. You are not the jerk at all. I work as a cashier at a commissary, a military grocery store, and the way we handle proof of membership is by scanning the customer's ID card. At the cash register, we have the ability to bypass this for workers who aren't in the military, but only for items that will be consumed on site. Now that the background is out of the way, onto the story. One slow day, I decided to go on my scheduled break a few minutes late, as we had most of our cashiers out on break already. As soon as we had enough back that my coworker wouldn't be unduly burdened by my absence, I closed up and turned in my till. Apparently, the cash office disliked this as she started to mutter about us taking breaks whenever we liked. Now, I'd like to point out that not only did we have 6 cashiers just come back from break, we only had 3 customers in the past hour. Additionally, if we didn't handle breaks ourselves, we wouldn't have to leave work early or accrue overtime. And Lord help you if you got so much as a minute of overtime. Now, being the nice guy I am, I ask if she wants me to open back up. She then spends the next 5 minutes ranting about how we just come to work to take breaks and we don't follow directions. Finally, she takes my till and I go on my break. But she'd really pissed me off due to some accusations of lying during her rant. Still, there isn't much I can do, or so I thought. Come the end of my shift, who would I see but that same cash office teller with a cart full of groceries in my line. I wait for her to unload all of her groceries before I ask for her ID. She says she left it in her car and I should just bypass it. Since I had just been ranted at about my work ethic, I stand firm. I never would have expected what happened next. But the memory still warms my shriveled heart. She starts going through the 5 stages of grief. I've chosen a few lines from each stage, but they lasted an average of 4 minutes each. First stage is denial. Oh, you don't really need my ID, do you? Stop playing. Second stage, anger. My husband served in the military. Of course I have my ID. What do you think I am? Third stage is bargaining. Please, I know you do this for other workers, just do this once. The fourth stage is depression. Do I really have to walk all the way to my car to get my ID? And finally, after 20 minutes of alternatively ignoring her and citing policy, she reaches the last stage, acceptance, and she begins loading her groceries back in her cart.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.